there's a lull in my life. No matter how I may pretend, I know that you alone can end the ache in my heart, the call of my arms, the lull in my life.
Can you divulge, do you have any specific strategies when you have an artist on your roster, whether they're new to your lineup or they just happen to be at a certain place in their career trajectory and they're not as well known as some of the other artists? Do you have specific strategies that you use in order to get them bookings? Aside
Yes.
from obviously, you know, if someone's like, oh, we've heard about this person, we want them, but for the ones that you go after on their behalf?
Sure. And a lot of this actually has to do with our overall process for how we work with artists. Okay, so to answer your question, how do we work with artists who are not necessarily as well known, and what types of strategies do we use? The truth is, the whole process, it doesn't matter how established the artist is or not, or how new they are. Our process, it always kind of starts with the same conversation with the artist. And the conversation starts by asking them this question. If we were having this conversation 3 years from now, and we were looking back over the years, what are all the things that have to have happened for you to feel happy with your progress? That's a question that I learned in the Strategic Coach program, because it applies to all types of client relationships. And I was able to modify and develop it specifically to artists, to musicians. Okay, but the nice thing about that question is that it makes the whole process entirely about the artist, and it becomes sort of customized to each artist, because each artist obviously has different goals, right? Yes, most artists do want to tour more. Yes, most artists want higher artist fees. That is a common characteristic, of course. But how you do that for artists really comes down to understanding what the artist is trying to achieve and getting them to think long term, right? And that goes back to what I was talking about, this idea of being excited to help them build their fan base. Because the truth is, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about, and obviously I don't work with big pop star artists, but the most successful ones are constantly challenging themselves to come up with bigger goals that will make them stretch more, right? I mean, and I think that's really true. You can see that with I'm just going to name some major artists, the Lady Gagas of the world, or whatever. Like, I really do think those artists they continue to be successful because they continue to challenge themselves, because they don't sit still. They don't want to necessarily repeat what they've done. And that's true of any type of musician. And that whole style of thinking is something that I try to encourage my artists to do, because especially if we're talking about jazz musicians, it is really difficult to expect your career will continue to grow if you are continuing to put out the same album with the same standards. You know what I mean? That is very antiquated, and that is not going to grow your fan base. And so that's difficult because some artists want to do that. But the other thing I would say about how we strategize for our artists, again, it goes back to that question. If they aren't able, if they aren't able to answer that question, and this is the first conversation we've ever had with an artist where we're actually trying to determine, would we be a good fit for this artist? And we ask that question and they really can't come up with anything. We know this might not be a good fit because it kind of disqualifies them from how we work. And that wouldn't benefit anybody, right? Conversely, if they're saying things in their answer that we know we don't have the capability for, we also know we're not a good fit, right? So you're trying to find this happy medium where we can be excited about their goals, but more importantly, we can help them reach them. And that's not easy to do.